I want to sit on top or sit? I was talking to some gentlemen earlier. I was kind of explaining with the whole sit-in and sit-on-top situation is the big thing for me would be wind. You know, you have to take into consideration wind. How high do you want to be off the water? You know, what kind of stability does your kayak have? So while you're deciding those factors, you're going to want to look into, do I want to do sit-in or sit on top, depending on what your needs are. I have, you know, one of each, but my sit-ins will become, you know, a hunting kayak. But that's something that we'll talk about too. Again, it's all about the application and what you plan to do with it. And sometimes the dollar pretty much decides for you where, you know, what direction you're going to go. Comfortability. Most of the seats in the kayaks these days are very comfortable. You know, Brian and I, you know, we do the bass fishing tournaments, and those can go off for about 7 or 8 hours easy. And with the type of kayak, you know, obviously the more money you pay, the better seat you get and all that. And plus, I've seen some guys do some DIY kind of stuff. But you're really going to need to make sure that if you want to be in the water for a long time, like you do in the glitter rockets, because those are super comfortable. We all know that. Plus, you have the ability to just kind of move about and stand and sit as much as you want. The seat is going to be a big decision. Because I know for some people too with back problems, that's definitely going to be a decision. How's it going to feel? You know, on my back, how are my knees going to feel? Bad knees or good knees? Seat, you know, and the sit on top is going to give you a higher standability. So you build like his seat, Brian's seat is like pretty high, so standing up was real easy. And this sit on top, sorry. But those are things to consider as well. You know, are you going to be taking long or short trips? Again, it's all about like your setup and how comfortable you are in your seat. You're definitely, you know, you can get fatigued from sitting improperly or just having something weigh on you in terms of like the weather, it's humid, it's cold. So everything's, you know, applicable to those decisions as well. And the species of fish you're chasing. If you're chasing like big fish, you're probably going to want to be in a little bit of a more stable water, you know, just for the fighting aspect. But, you know, if you're going for panfish, crappie, bass, you can get away with the pretty much standard width, what I think would probably be like, I would say 29 to like 33 inches, which will still give you standability, maybe a little more speed out of it, but you're definitely going to get the stability out of that. I think that's the biggest part of it. But, yeah, I mean, does anybody have any questions concerning this?
So which one is more stable, the set in or the set on top?
Well, see, that all depends. You know, and let me just back up too. Like, so like, I'll use Jackson Kilroy to like list. The Jackson Kilroy is 31 inches wide, and that's a sit-in, but you can stand it as well. And then the Liska is 34 inches wide. They're a little different in the way they act, and a lot of it has to do with your balance, first and foremost, and getting the practice to you know, to kind of get used to the feel. Because once you get used to the feel of it, you'll get that. What am I trying to say here? It'll be easier for you to balance basically on top of the kayak. So on the Kilroy, the outside water pushes in on the thinner kayak, and it helps for the stability. It's like built into the idea, the functionality. But that boat's a little faster. As for the Liska, it's a little slower, but it's incredibly stable. Being that it's 34 inches wide. Now, not all 34-inch wide boats are going to feel the same. The secondary stability sometimes kicks in a little later or a little sooner. So it's really, the thing is that when you get out and demo these boats, that's really where you're going to get a lot of the, you know, the feel for it, and then kind of figure out where you're at with it, and like what decisions you're going to make, like as far as like your fishing, like what's going to fit you, you know. A lot of times what I do is I'll bounce back and forth, kind of like this, just to kind of see where those secondaries are kicking in, so you know like how loose you can be. But yeah, I mean, it's really going to take, I would say, you got to get out there and demo it and kind of decide. But there's only a few sit-ins that you can actually stand, you know, at this point. But I would say demo. And that'll come up a little later, but definitely demo as many boats to really see like what'll like fit that. Because everyone's different.
Yeah, and I'll touch too on comfortability. Yesterday I spent 9.5 hours in this boat, And without that seat, I would be pretty sore if I was in like a little cheap sit-in Pelican kayak. I had one of those. Me being as tall as I am, you know, spending an hour and a half in that boat, I have a hard time getting up and getting out of it just because my back gets so stiff. So that's the thing, you know, comfortability and the long trips go kind of hand in hand. Short trips, you can pretty much get away with anything. But, you know, I think Jay did a good touch on that. And like you said, demoing. You know, Rocktown here, they have pretty much every boat that's on any of these racks in the warehouse next door. When's the first demo, Kevin?
Sunday, May 5th is the first outside, unless we get a super warm late day in April. We also offer them by appointment, so if our schedule doesn't meet yours, just give us a call and say, hey, I would like to go out and paddle, looking to try ABC. We're going to reiterate with Ersting, couldn't agree more. We call it butts and boats.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to know what you want until you get out and try. You'd be surprised how many people have their heart set on ABC. And as long as they're there, I said, just try this one for the hell of it, as long as you're here.
Yep.
They end up buying a totally different boat than they were coming out to get.
And that's exactly what my situation was when I bought the Bonafide. I actually came and thought I was going to buy the new Canoe Pursuit. And the big thing when I looked at getting a straight-up fishing kayak was stability. I love to stand and sight fish. You know, that flexibility of being able to stand up and stretch your legs. Again, I'm a tall guy, so, you know, being crunched up for hours at a time and being able to stretch is a good thing. You know, I'm not saying that the new Canoe Pursuit was bad in any way, shape, or form, but the stability for me came out of the Bonafide. So that was my big deciding factor. However, like Jay touched on, you know, with certain things in certain boats, you're going to lose some other aspects. That Pursuit paddles totally fast compared to the Bonafide. And I'm not saying the Bonafide's slow, but the way that front nose is, it just cuts right through the water and tracks really well. The Bonafide tracks really well, but it's just not as fast. However, I got a lot more stability out of this boat compared to the Pursuit, in my opinion. And that's the thing, you know, we don't try to say, hey, go try out this boat, go try out that boat, because like Jay touched on, what I like, what Jay likes, what you like, it's going to be three totally different things. So propulsion, like I mentioned, some guys will throw trolling motors on the back. You guys have seen pedal drives. My favorite is the paddle. Pros and cons to all. I prefer paddling just because it's a little more stealthy. It's a good workout. I like to eat cheeseburgers. Jay likes the pedal drive. He's on the Jackson team, so he utilizes that pedal drive. But you know, when I'm fishing with Jay, he tends to paddle. Just you know, so we're kind of even keel. A lot of guys will do trolling motors. Our former co-host of the podcast, he's got a new Canoe Frontier 12, and he fishes a lot of rivers. So he can take that trolling motor, drive up river, and float back down. It's kind of nice when I go with him because he brings an extra rope and I hold on to it and he tows me up. So that saves my arms from paddling all the way upstream. You know, pedal drive has its advantages, especially in tournament fishing situations, and the same thing with trolling motors. You know, you can cover a lot more ground compared to the guy that's paddling. So there's pros and cons to each. Paddle, a lighter paddle is better, especially if you're, you know, putting a long amount of time on the actual water. I'll pass my paddle around here real quick, and you can tell how light this thing actually is, and this is a really long paddle. You're going to pay for it. However, a paddle that's a pound heavier and you're spending 6 hours on the water, your arms are going to be pretty fatigued by the end of the day. One of my first boats I had a cheap little $50 paddle that I bought at Gander Outdoors, I think it was, or something like that. And if I'd spend any more than an hour on the water, you would definitely feel it in your arms, your biceps, and your shoulders. So, you know, if you guys are going to go with paddle, I would recommend a very lightweight paddle, especially if you're doing longer trips. If you're just going out fishing for an hour every day after work or something, totally different story. You can pretty much get away with whatever you want. You know, some paddles come with bent shafts. I know there's one on the wall there. That's so you don't break your wrist as much as you're paddling through the water. So some things to consider. If you guys ever have any questions or you're looking at paddles, you know, they're right over on the wall there. Travis would be more than happy to answer any questions for you guys or us as well.
Yeah, it's been said too that like usually when you come into a shop, they're like usually the first thing they're going to ask you is, you know, what's your budget? And let's just say it's $1,000. And you're like, okay, well, 250 that should probably go towards your paddle, because your paddle's going to be an investment, and it's also going to be able to go with your other kayaks. You know, in the fishing world, for those of us in the regular fishing kayaks, like a 240 to like a 260 is usually that good area to be in, because when you're up higher, you need that reach. You don't want to be leaning, you know, so you want something that can kind of, you know, you can adjust to length depending on what your fishing situation is. Me, like, even if I'm lower or higher, I'm always 255. I don't even care. Like, I love having that reach. It's just so much easier. And not to mention, when you pay that money, and I know it sounds crazy, because some of them are like $300, some of them are $400. I mean, it's nuts. But you're getting way less weight, you're getting way better materials. And these are not only a paddle, they're a tool. So when you're out like in the river and you get stuck or something, you can literally jam these things into the ground and you're going to be okay. I've been on the Collins River and I got caught in my FD because a rock went right in the spot where my drive is. And I was stuck. I mean, and I was stuck. I'm going down like, you know, some like minor rapids, but I had to use my paddle to like jam to pry myself off. And you wouldn't be able to do it with aluminum. Aluminum would have bent. Plus, you got the flimsy fiberglass, you know, ends, and it's like you're not going to get that stiffness and that rigid you need. Also, that's another thing too with the carpet. In my opinion, like you definitely need that rigid aspect to definitely get speed and to move these boats. You know, because I've had the other ones, because I've gone through the growing pains of, yeah, I like that paddle. I think that's good. It's right. It's in my price range, like $120. Well, guess what? Now when I'm paddling, it's like I can feel, you know, the turbulence of the paddle like bending to the water. But once I moved up to one of these, I didn't have it anymore. So definitely your paddle this is going to be something that you'll have with you for a long, long time. And when you spend that money, and we're not affiliated with any of these companies, by the way. We all.
I'm not paying them to sell anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's most of these companies will actually pretty much back up their paddle and get you a new paddle if you break it.
Yeah, the two major players is Bending Branches and Werner, and they both have an adjustable shaft. Werner just came out with it. They call it the lever lock, where I think the 240 to 260 is one, which would be a great paddle, and then Bending Branches, they actually have it where it's a push button. Right?
Yeah, they have two different kinds. They have a Furel that's is I guess is that the right way to say that?
Yeah.
So it twist locks, and mine goes from 240 to 255. And again, I'm always at 255, so it doesn't even matter. Unless I got on the side of my boat, then I'll collapse it all the way.
For those of us who don't know what the hell you're talking about, 240, 255.
Centimeters.
What is that?
That's centimeters long.
That's the length, the
Yeah, the
overall
length,
length.
sorry. Yeah.
So this paddle here is a 250. I like 250. That seems like my sweet spot. I could probably get away with a 255, but it's basically from end to end.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, so that would be definitely one thing, like, because I know there's a lot of people when you go to like a big box store, like people, they don't know how to sell paddles or kayaks. And nobody will ever talk to you like that unless you come to a shop like this.
And one thing I will say, you'll notice, like, when you're looking at paddles, you got different blades. You got a skinnier blade and you got a wider blade. This is a wider blade. So when I paddle, I actually dig like this. Whereas if you're more of a side-to-side paddler, you'll want that skinnier paddle. The way it just cuts through the water is what that is. You're going to have a harder time cutting through the water on the side with a thicker blade paddle compared to a thinner.
But either way, it's like that. I mean, as far as that goes too, they both move the kayak.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, again, that'll come down to money too, because not everybody wants to spend $350 on a paddle. You know, I get it. You're looking for the deal, so sometimes you might have to, you know, get the different size blade. But most of them are pretty much like this. This is pretty much what you'll see everywhere. But yeah, definitely an important part of the kayak, probably the most important.
So you're operating a paddle or and a pedal?
But yeah, I do both.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like
So
you
want the better paddle, even though you have pedal.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm in a, so if I have a pedal drive, no matter where I'm going, I'm always taking a paddle, and that's because in case my drive breaks, anything can happen, or I get hurt, maybe I hurt my knee, you know, or something. I can still use the paddle. This will always be on the boat, no matter what. And then to Brian's point, like we just went out to Tennessee. I could have taken my pedal drive, but I decided not to because I didn't want to be bouncing around. I took my my regular paddle again, just because I would be able to keep up with them. Plus, too, I prefer. I mean, I like paddling too, just as much as I like paddling. It just depends. You know, it really does. It's, you know, if I got, you know, I got the big rig, so that's a 13-foot boat. You know, so I mean, I'm gonna want bigger water usually. You know, I want like a different situation. Sure. Plus, it was more of a excuse me. It was like a weight issue too for how high we were putting them, but mostly because it was just a bigger boat, and I didn't want to, you know, be away from these guys and, you know, I don't know. It was just more of a. I'd rather be going your speed. You know, it's like, you know, sorry, but like you said, I'm a strong paddler, so, you know, it still fits well. And it works good. And like I said, you know, I'll jump on the Elysian some days instead of the big rig. It just depends what I'm feeling and where I'm fishing.
Not only that too, but you know, pedal drives, like if you're fishing rivers, some rivers are shallow or they'll go deep too shallow. You can't necessarily take a pedal drive down through that kind of water. So that's one thing. Going back to buying a kayak, you know, that's why we ask you what kind of water you're fishing, because I wouldn't want to sell you a big rig with a pedal drive in it if you're going to be fishing the Kishwaukee River all the time. That just wouldn't work out. You know what I mean?
What's the difference in speed in paddle?
So yesterday, due to my nifty little Garmin unit there, I think I was paddling when I was just straight paddling and just going at kind of a cruising pace. I was doing roughly 3.5 miles an hour. I think pedaling.
It's about 3.5.
Yeah.
He's like a freak. He can paddle pretty fast.
I got long
Fishing
arms.
kayak.
I got a long paddle.
Yeah, he's
I
fast.
don't even need that.
Trolling motors.
It's it.
Most guys with trolling motors, I've seen anywhere between 4.5 miles an hour to upwards towards 7, which 7 miles an hour in a kayak is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's with there's a brand called Torpedo that makes these trolling motors specific for kayaks. And some guy had just the largest one he could buy to put on the back of his boat because the tournament series he was fishing, they didn't have a restriction on that, which we'll get into later. Talking about tournament fishing, as a lot of them have restrictions on the size of motors you can use if they do even allow them. But yeah, I mean, 7 miles an hour in a narrow boat like that, and you turn too sharply, that could be pretty bad. You might end up in the drink.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got to be real careful too if you decide to go that route. If you do a DIY type situation where because there are some very brilliant hacks out there with existing, like Minn Kota, budget trolling motors. If you overpower the kayak, that's an issue too. Like going fast is great, but most of these are only like pretty much designed to do 5 to 6 miles an hour. You know, if you start getting over that, especially in turns like he was saying, you can like flip yourself out of that boat. In most cases, you're gonna fall out of this thing before this thing flips. But I can tell you that you get enough of that centrifugal force, you know, or I just think it would be the opposite, wouldn't it? Yeah, I can't forget. I must have flunked that part, but I mean, you can feel that force, like, you know, bringing you out. I mean, case in point, I used the E-Flex motor, the Jackson Kayak E-Flex motor on a cruise. That thing almost tossed me out. Like, I wasn't even paying. I'm like, yeah, I'm speeding, I might take a turn. And I was like, whoa, you know, I had to bring it back real quick, stick a leg out,
to get my weight back over to the side. Of course, I'm a lot heavier than, most people who are in those boats are like 150, 160 pounds. I'm 250. So I pretty much that was a little bit too heavy, a little top heavy for that boat, in my opinion, to go that fast. But that's another thing, just remember, don't overpower your boat if you decide to go that route. Just be careful, because you can toss yourself out.
Yeah, and if you toss yourself out, one thing you gotta look at, I typically have 6 rods in the back. Each one's probably roughly $300 a piece. That's a lot of money going down the drain. So, try to be careful. Otherwise, you're gonna lose gear, things like that. Yeah, question.
Yeah, if you put a motor on that boat, do you have to register it then?
Yep.
Yes, so in the state of Illinois, a pedal drive or paddle-driven kayak, it used to be you would have to get a water usage stamp. Basically, it was like $6. June of last year, they got rid of that, so you no longer need a registration. But once you put a electric or gas power motor on any craft, you have to register it through the state. It's just like registering a regular fishing boat. You get a sticker every 3 years. You got to renew it. I think it's roughly for the first part of the registration, it's right around $25, something like that. And then every year you renew, I believe it's $18. But yeah, you definitely have to register if you put an electric driven motor on. So like Jay's instance, he's putting the Jackson E-Drive on his big rig. He's going to have to register that through the state.
Yeah, and Jackson said you better register your boat. We don't want anybody out there without an unregistered boat, like putting out pictures with it too. But yeah, I mean, rules are rules. So we all got to follow.
Pedal drives, each manufacturer makes a different drive. Jackson's got the flex drive. This is a picture of it. This is probably one of my favorite drives, just due to the fact that if you're going in a lake, say it's dark water or murky water, you can't see what's underneath the surface, this skeg automatically breaks free and goes up into the hull of the boat. We can see that on any of the Jackson pedal drives over there.
You can run it wrong with this drive.
Whereas, I know I was talking to you about the Predator. The Old Town Predator drive, I've personally been in that boat. That drive is super fast. The only thing I don't like about it is if you're cruising through the water, there's a log or something underneath the water, and you hit that, you're going to stop. And then you risk possibly breaking something. I know I talked to one of the reps from Old Town up at the Madison Fishing Show, and he was saying a lot of guys, there's those 2 lock knobs for that drive in the back. He says a lot of guys leave that loose, so that way if they do hit something, it pushes up. They said you can get away with that, but they're not going to tell you that because they don't want the instance of a bunch of guys are going crashing into things, drives breaking out, and replacing them for free. I know Native Watercraft, their drive is very similar to being locked in place. New Canoe is coming out with a pivot drive in fall, I believe they're saying now. And I believe that's a breakaway drive for the instance of you running aground, running into something, things like that. So there's pros and cons to these pedal drives. The Hobie, all right. So yeah, that's always the question.
That's a first of all, it's a bad word.
So you got Hobie guys and you got everybody else over here. Hobie drive is nice for shallow water. What they say you can do is, that drive goes back and forth like this, and when you do that, those fins come up to the bottom of the boat. So when guys are going in short, they'll have those fins tucked up tight. If they're going in shallow water, they'll give quick little pumps. From what I've been told, the drive is pretty quick. I've seen it. I actually saw a video where it was one of the fishing shows this past fall. They hooked a Hobie to, I forget what the other kayak was, and the other kayak had an electric trolling motor on it, and the Hobie pulled the boat with the electric trolling motor going full speed. So the drives are fast. However, I know those fins, that is part of their propulsion system. If you guys haven't seen the the Hobie drive, it's basically two fins, they sit like this and they go back and forth like this. And that's how that drive works. If you hit something with those fins, a lot of times you will mess them up and they'll need to be replaced. They're not cheap to be replaced. But overall, I mean, Hobie's a great boat. I mean, they got the pros and cons as well.
Yeah, and I'll say too, like, because we fish against tons of guys with Hobies. Matter of fact, that's what made me want to get a pedal gun.
Yeah.
Because I was watching them just take off as I was like, okay, I'll give it a minute, you know. The main thing is no matter what drive you get, you know, do some of the research and then just bring extra parts. You know, even on the flex drives, even though the blades are flexible, but yet sturdy enough to get you where you want to go. You know, if you're backing up when they're the most vulnerable, you can hit a rock, stump, you can bust one of them up. Now, I'm not saying you can't run on two, because we've seen them run on two blades, no problem. You feel the vibration difference, but you can switch out those blades in like less than 2 minutes. I ain't even kidding. But I mean, even the Hobie guys, like my personal friend Glenn, he's on the Hobie team. He had that issue where he bent one of the arms or one of the flippers. To him, it didn't feel right. So now, at this point, he carries like 2 extra sets on him all the time. So just in case he hits something, because he's one of the guys too. He'll go right into a weed area and like flutter those things right on the bottom of his yak and get through grass mats. He swears by it. Other people don't. You know, but I think it's just something you got to get used to. But definitely just bring extra parts, bring extra tools. Just make sure you're prepared so you don't get stuck. You know, because they're, like to Brian's point, there's pros and cons to all of them. And Hobie is tried and tested. And, you know, they've been in the game a long time. But there's a lot of other good drives out there too.
Therein lies my issue, because I have been in the Hobie down in Florida.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now I'm in the market, and you go to the internet, and there's 6 million people out there trying to sell as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's usually a lot of the boat guys go into Hobies. It's like they go into the pro angler 14s and 12s. You know, but again, it's and there's a big price point there too. It really depends where you're at. I mean, that's a $3,800 boat, depending on where you're at. Plus, I mean, we're getting off a little bit off, but there's a lot of weight that comes with that too. Hobies are by far the heaviest. You know, but pros and cons to all. You know, just a lot of guys are trailing most of those. But it's a good drive.
The biggest thing about a Hobie is it's not as a traditional sit on top. So a lot of people get on kayaks to sit up high to be able to sight fish. In a Hobie, you're actually kind of sitting in the cutout of the boat,
Sure.
as opposed to sitting up high. Some people that's good, some people it's bad, and that's pretty much the demarcation on it. They make good stuff, obviously. I've been in them a lot, but it's your sight that changes just a little bit. If you want to stand in them or sight fish, maybe it might not be the best one for you unless you're the pro angler.
Sure.
Now you're talking about $4,000 and a 120-pound boat.
Yeah. 145.
Yeah, it's like 145, 150.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So it's a heavy boat. It's not necessarily a boat you want to put on your roof rack by yourself. I think we pretty much covered electric motors. Anybody else got any questions on the electric motors? All right.
Okay, sounds good. We'll close on Mondays.
Stability. Again, this is me standing fishing. Stability in every boat's going to be different. I think Jay touched on that pretty well. Different boats have different ways of gaining their stability. Bonafide, if you look at the back of this boat, it's got a catamaran style hull. So that's where it gets its stability from. You got 2 basic like pontoons underneath that boat that are pushing off the water. New canoe, you can see on the bottom of this Frontier 10 here how it's got these different chines. And this was what Jay was talking about as far as secondary and primary. There's different bevels on here, and when you're leaning, that bevel is pushing back off the water to give you stability. And not only that, but these Frontiers are super wide. My buddy Scott's got this Frontier 12, same color, everything. I've stood on the side of this boat, and I can't get it to flip over. So, when we talk about stability in fishing kayaks, a lot of times you're going to fall out of your boat before you flip it over. You know, different boats are going to do different things, and that goes back to demoing boats. You know, you're not a guy that wants to stand up and fish a lot. You just want to kind of paddle around and cast. You know, that's going to be a big difference in choosing a boat compared to me who likes to stand and fish. So, anything on stability?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
point.
you just get out there and you know, try out every boat. You know, again, there's a lot of factors driving your decision. Just decide what you're going to do. And when you do come demo boats, bring your rod, fish.
Yeah.
Like, do what you're going to do normally.
Yeah.
That way you'll know. There is a learning curve for like a lot of the guys that aren't used to it, especially with the paddle aspect, even with the pedals for that matter. But I mean, you know, you're gonna feel a little fumbly and stuff. That's okay. It's just we still get that way. It just depends what you know we're doing. But you'll get kind of used to a system. It's really all it comes down to. But you'll get the full feel of it if you try to do exactly what you're gonna do. You know, and then that'll help your decision.
Thank you.
Eeny, meeny,
See
miny,
this
moe.
boat?
There's 4 things you need to go kayak fishing. What are they? I'm gonna test you guys now. Look. There you go. PFD.
Your paperwork.
I say PDF all the time.
You know, you're busy guy. You sound like.
Personal flotation device. A boat, a paddle. The 4th one is the one that nobody ever guesses, and that is a whistle. You were thinking it, I could see it. I always keep mine right here in the front pocket, connected to my PFD. By law, you have to have some kind of device to alert somebody if you're in distress. You need some help, things like that. It's always important. That's the biggest thing I see guys forget to have, other than the yahoos that don't wear their PFDs. We had a situation last Wednesday. We took a new guy out, and we were both at fault.
Yep.
We didn't notice till halfway through the day that my bonehead cousin didn't have his PFD
He
on.
had it with him.
He had it with him, but that doesn't do you justice. Because like we said, you're gonna,
It meets the law.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
As long
does.
as you have
It
your
does.
boat, you're legal.
But you guys should be wearing that. I mean, you can't stress it enough. You know, like we said, you're going to fall out of these boats before you tip them over. And when you fall out of that boat, it's going to be when you're least expecting it. And especially in these spring months, just Thursday, I was over at Rocktown State Park. The water temps are only 42 to 45 degrees. You fall in that water, you have a very limited amount of time before hypothermia kicks in. So, you know, we can't stress that enough. Always wear your PFD. I know in our tournament situations, you have to have that on at all times. If they catch you without it on, you're automatically disqualified. So, it's a great safety thing. You know, I wear the NRS Chinook. I used to have a cheap field and stream jacket, but the nice thing about these guys is, you know, especially fishing jackets, they make it so you don't have a ton of stuff here on your shoulders, so you got free movement while you're paddling, while you're fishing. I don't even notice that this thing is there when I have it on. So, I mean, that's just one thing.
Plus, you can put a lot of gear in the pockets.
Yeah. I mean, I got 4 sets in this pocket. I got my cell phone I usually put in this pocket. I got line clippers here. Got my whistle, things like that.
Yeah, your phone will fit right here too.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Those in this pocket.
Or in that pocket. No, but you know, another thing too is I actually use an inflatable one, mainly because I'm a bigger dude. You know, my tactical shell sticks out more. I don't need any more sticking out. But the one thing I'm always jealous about is I can't gear up like. Remember the past few times, I'm like, oh, I forgot my pliers.
Yeah.
Like, so thank God he carries an extra set, because I'm using Brian's pliers.
So he
most
always
of the time.
paddles over to me. Hey,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah. But he's got them on his PFD. You know, a lot of guys put like their knife, their PFD, your phone, your whistle,
solid
when you're doing
plastics.
big water, you can put the radio on there because you got to have the RF radios in there. That's a whole nother education on that. But I mean, you can carry a ton of gear just for like, you know, every situation fishing that is, you know, crucial, which I have to like stow either, you know, on my deck space or in an area, you know, I mean, it's a different situation for me. So, you know, the Chinook, in my opinion, probably one of the best ones out there.
Put enough stuff on there to be big, yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. But I mean, it's like like I said, you know, if you are considering one, there's some really good ones out there. You know, NRS makes a lot of good ones, and the price point is not bad. Onyx makes, you know, a pretty good fishing one. I really like the Chinook a little better, just because of the way it tapers too. You know, the beveled edges and just the overall fit and just, you know, everything you can do with them.
Yeah, and there's a ton of PFDs over there. So to say you don't want all the pockets and stuff, I know there was a vest I was looking at the other day that's made by Astral, and it's just a pad here. It's got a strap that goes around, straps over your shoulder, and a pad in the back. So it's kind of minimal if you don't want all that extra stuff. But I know NRS made that Chinook for fishing guys. That's why it's got all the little pockets for all your little gadgets and everything like that.
Do you find that the pad in the back of the fish
This one, no. I was actually worried about that when I bought the Chinook. And I just recently bought the Chinook, and it actually, because I'm a taller guy, it sits right about up there.
And that's what they're all designed pretty much to do, is to have it up in the back. And most of the designers, when they're you know, for all the companies that are making this, that's why you see a lot of this curve, like almost on all these boats, on all the seats, because they know you have something sticking off your back from the PFD. You know, so I would say like get in the habit of doing it. I know it sounds, you know, it might sound dumb to you if you're not used to it, and maybe on those summer hot days, just do it. I mean, it's just a better safety factor. I mean, you know, the reality of it is we've lost a lot of kayakers. I mean, we're talking like professional kayakers, you know, that are out there, and we've lost quite a few in the past 2 years. Now we're talking 20-year-olds to like 60-year-olds. I mean, easy.
Yeah,
you know, different situations. Some people with, some people without. I mean, you know, you're better off, like he says. If you fall out of that boat, you hit your head. Now what?
Yeah.
You can drown in like what, a tablespoon of water, something like that. All you need is a little bit to get in your lungs. So I mean, you know, this will help you keep your head up. That's the other thing too. Usually, when this is put on right, it's meant to actually turn you over to where your head, like when you're breathing, you know, air instead of water.
Yeah, last August there was 2 college kids, one out on Lake Michigan. They left at like 8 o'clock at night, had no lights on their boat, no PFDs in their boat, and Lake Michigan being a big body of water, that wind direction changes, that lake can get pretty nasty. I've been out there when it's flat, calm, and foggy, and the next thing you know, you're in 6-foot waves. Not in a kayak, thankfully, but Lake Michigan, big bodies of water like that can turn like a light switch, and that'll kill a lot of people. And these 2 college kids took off, and that's pretty much what happened. They were going from Winnetka to Highland Park, and they were in little sit-in kayaks. They both got capsized. Either had PFDs. The one guy didn't know how to swim. He didn't make it home. It took him 3 days to find him. It's just that serious. Last fall, my hairs are sticking up. We lost a woman that was really big in the KDF. Rebecca Golden, it was either a heart attack or a stroke. She didn't show back up to the launch. They sent a search party out for her, and luckily they found her because she was wearing her PFD. So it's one of those situations. You know, you never know what will happen. It's a sad story, but at least her family was able to give her a proper burial.
Yeah, don't mess with the safety aspect. Just wear them.
Yeah.
You know, you'll be better off. I know sometimes they're hot, you know, and stuff, but I mean, you're better off. And don't wear them and unzip. That's not going to do anything for you. They'll slip right out of that. Ultimately, it's your decision, you know. But I mean, even on Wednesday when we went, when I noticed, I was like, oh my God, you're not wearing your PF. I was like, it's weird. It's so instilled in me. I kind of like freaked out a little bit, just because of the water temp and everything. And I just, you know, and plus too, it's like it's a direct connection. He was his cousin. So I'm like, oh my God, like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I got it right here. I'm like, well, put it on. I'm like, what are you doing? So you put it on and stuff, But I mean, like I said, it's a safety thing. And here's the thing too, it's not just about you. What about all the people that support you? What about your family?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're doing them a discredit if you're not, in my opinion, if you're not wearing it.
Yeah.
Because if something happens to you, that's where the fall is.
Definitely. Yeah, so basically a couple things like rod holders, guys, you don't want to be holding your rod between your legs while you're trying to paddle. Done it. There's simple things. There's rod holders that can attach to your gear tracks. I'm looking for one, I know they're over there. I run a black pack in the back, so this serves as my rod holders plus tackle storage. Paddle leash. This is usually attached to my paddle at all times. My buddy that I talked about in the Frontier 12, he didn't have a paddle. In the first 15 seconds of being on the water, he's like, hey, can you get my paddle for me? I just dropped it in the water. Like, sure, So you drop your paddle, you're in the middle of the lake. You're going to be doing that doggy paddle and wish you had long arms like going back to shore. Tackle storage, we talked about that. Some guys run anchors on their boats. There's different styles. Anchor Wizard is one of them that we carry here at the shop. That's kind of nice because it's got a little canister with a handle on top for the rope. And it actually mounts to either the front or the back of your kayak and deploys down in the water. Crank that back up to get it back up.
Yeah. Some of the kayaks will come equipped with basically like divots in the mold where you can run like 550 cord for your anchor. And the other thing is too, be careful about your anchor choice depending on what you're going to be fishing. There's a thing. Has anybody ever heard of a drag train? A drag chain? Okay, so that's that's something to look up. Basically, that is a good all-around anchor to use in like especially river situations. Because I fish up on there's a lot of quarries, and I've already run into an issue where you got the traditional one that opens up and it locks. And if you don't have that thing set up right, I've been caught under rocks, and I mean literally you're trying to get the anchor back, and it's like it's gone. You can't get it back, and you got to cut the line. But if you're moving, let's say you're drifting or something, and that thing grabs, and there's enough current, or maybe the wind's too heavy. I've had this situation. And then I've also had it where the wind's blowing me this way, and the line goes underneath, and then all of a sudden it grabs onto something. Now the boat wants to do this. So you really got to be paying attention to what kind of anchor you're using, what the scenario is, what the weight is. The weight's hooked up. If you don't know how to correctly hook up an anchor, we can tell you about it, or you can look it up on YouTube. YouTube is like 101 for everything, so you can learn a lot of good stuff on it. But there is a correct way to set up an emergency release for anchors. All I'm saying is just exercise caution. If you go that route.
Yeah, definitely. We got fishing nets. You don't have to carry one. This one I just purchased this last week. It's nice because it can pack down. It's a nice thing to have, especially in a tournament situation. Actually, it can make or break you. I lost one fish at the side of the boat yesterday. I reached it down and grabbed it. But a lot of times that's easier, and not only that, but the safety aspect. If you're sitting in that chair and you're reaching down to grab a fish, now your boat's kind of leaning a little bit. If you're with a net, you can just kind of reach out and scoop it up. Dry bag. We carry some at the shop here. Especially in cold weather months, you might want to have a dry bag to put a dry set of clothes in case you don't fall over, or things like that.
I pretty much in my dry bag I've actually got a walkie-talkie with an emergency band on it. It's one of the Cobras. It's like a 25-mile. But the more, like I said, the important thing is got the emergency band on it. Carry toilet paper. Bring toilet paper.
Yeah.
Like you won't know you need it, or you won't even think you need it until you need it.
Yeah.
First aid kits, extra food if you're bringing that. Maybe you don't want to have your cell phone out, throw it in the bag. Anything you don't want to get get wet, throw it in the hatch, bungee it down in the back, whatever. Anything you want to keep dry, just put in dry there.
And then the last thing is just a dry suit, and that is for cold weather conditions. The event that you do fall in, like these past couple of trips I've been out, I got the NRS dry bibs, so that way if I do fall in, water is not going to get this down wet. I should be wearing a jacket as well, but you know, definitely in cold weather months you want to wear some kind of dry suit, have spare clothes, maybe in the front hatch of your boat, in a dry bag in the back, something like that, just for the event that you do fall in. It's more of a safety thing. Like I said, hypothermia can set in pretty quick, and things of that nature. Rigging your boat. A cleaner deck is better. That's less stuff. You're bumbling around. I had that issue last weekend. I just had way too much stuff on here. I had bags of plastic up here, my coffee cup, you know, stuff under my seat, sliding out, my bump board, my net, things like that. Cleaner is better. It definitely helps as far as safety goes. You want tools accessible. Like I said, I put a lot of my stuff in my PFD. I know some guys will rig up some stuff on their side of their seat that'll hold, you know, a pair of scissors, pliers, forceps, things like that that you're going to need right away for either re-rigging baits, unhooking fish, things like that. Depth finders, you know, we're all fishermen, we all want depth finders. There's many different ways to do it. I know Jay runs a cell block on his big rig, and what a cell block is, it's basically a plastic box, holds a battery in the inside, depth finder mounts to the top, and then a lot of these boats now are rigged up so there's a mount for the transducer underneath the boat. If not, they make arms so you can go over the side. Me personally, I just rigged this one up not too long ago. So Bonafide makes this nice removable pod. So I got my transducer on the bottom, battery inside the box, depth finder mounts to the top. There's a ton of information out there. You know, go to YouTube and search the model of your boat and depth finder, and you'll see 20 different ways on how to rig that up for your specific needs. You know, some guys like it right in front of them, some guys like it off to the side, things like that. You know, there's many different ways to do it.
Yeah, and there's like another thing, like with the transducers, if you're inside imaging, a lot of the guys are going to go off the side because they don't want the interference of the boat in the readings. Now, I know some Garmin guys actually will mount the transducers to the inside of the hull, and it'll penetrate, and there might be some dullness. I don't know. I can't speak to this because I don't do it. I have an arm. I have side imaging, so mine's always off to the side and below the kayak, and I think yours is below too, right? Because you got side imaging.
It's just below. It barely sticks out, so I get a clear image out of it.
Yeah. So and then the thing to remember is that like if you run aground, like most of us will, like when you come to land, just make sure that transducer is out of harm's way. Because if you're running aground, you can scrape it up and start damaging your transducer.
Tackle management, just, you know, there's many different ways to manage a tackle. Like I said before, I run the black pack, so I got 630, or actually I probably got 7 in here right now. 3,700 Plano boxes. I sometimes keep stuff under here, under my seat. I know I got I think it's like an ugly stick tackle bag that I throw all my Senko worms in. Just keeping stuff separated and organized is nice, especially when you're fishing. I'm sure all of you know that. And then we already talked about rod holders, and then a safety flag. This is made by Yak Attack. There's many other different models out there, but just having a flag on your boat so boaters can see you. Remember, you're in a kayak, you're sitting lower in the water, so something sticking up like that, obviously you know, you wouldn't necessarily see those 6 rods before you saw that orange flag. And they even make other cool flags, like there's a pirate flag, I think, over there on the wall that you could fly. But, you know, just a safety thing, and not only that, but one thing I wanted to touch on is this little white cap on the top that's got an LED light in it. So if I'm going out at night, turn that, or night, early morning, before dawn, turn that on so boats can see you. You don't necessarily want to put the red and green lights on the front of your kayak like you would a typical boat. Some bodies of water may require it, just check the regulations. But the reason why you don't want to put those on the front is because now he's coming along with his glitter rocket and I got my red and green lights on. He thinks I'm another glitter rocket. So he thinks I'm going to get out of his way because he thinks I got a big motor on the back of my boat or something of that nature. Whereas the regular light just says, hey, there's something there to you when you're coming across the water. So you don't want to necessarily look like a big boat. So a lot of guys will recommend that. I know some kayaks are coming with it built in with the red and green lights in the front. But a lot of guys will tell you that's kind of a bad thing because they've run into some hairy situations.
The one that I walk on, if it's the red screen on that kind of boat,
Yeah.
it's required to like light it or after.
Yeah, definitely. So I know in all of our tournaments, right, I think KDL requires the white light in the back. So, yeah, some kind of light so other boats know you're there on the water. It's just a safety aspect thing. A lot of tournaments you're taking off at 6 a.m., sometimes 5:30, things like that. I know right now the Kayak Bass Fishing National Tournament's going on down in Shreveport, Louisiana, and that's a big thing. You know, if you've seen guys taking off, it's still dark out. You got to have some kind of light on your boat.
Red light shutters,
Yeah, it's all the way around.
There's a lot of DIY options out there too. I mean, I think there's like 70 or 80 bucks.
There's different models, different.
But that thing folds down, and it actually folds down to fit inside the flat.
Yeah.
So you're paying for the convenience, collapsibility.
Sure.
But I mean, I've seen people use like yardsticks.
Yeah.
You know, and just put like an orange flag on there and go out there with that.
It's just a safety thing, guys. Where to fish? I know you guys up there on the chain of lakes, you're going to have a hard time with this first one.
Yeah.
Avoid heavy boat traffic, you know. Yeah, there's some lakes that we all want to fish that have heavy boat traffic. Just be cautious. Try not to paddle across the straight center of the lake where everybody's zipping around. Maybe paddle along the shore or something like that. Or if you are crossing a body of water, just cross it as fast as possible. Check for kayak-friendly waters. I was talking to somebody earlier, I think it was you guys, up here at Rock Cut. They have a lake specifically for canoes and kayaks. They don't allow any motors on it. That's Olson Lake. It's in the back part of the park there. It's got a ton of great bass fishing, and we're kind of fortunate that we have that and the other guys don't, because the bigger lake, Pierce Lake, gets a ton of pressure. Don't get me wrong, there's some good fishing in there, but that back Olson Lake doesn't get the amount of pressure because there's not a ton of people going out there to kayak fish. I know I fished there last fall, and I had a pretty stellar day. And it was nice because you're not battling the waves. You know, just yesterday I was down on St. Chris Lake down by Springfield, and there's a ton of boats whipping around. Granted, they were only 25 horsepower, but you know, all these guys are ripping across the lake. And you know, in this boat, I don't worry about their wakes coming across my path. But in other boats, you might have a concern where you want to pay attention and be aware of what's going on around you in case that wave comes and you end up tipping over. Rivers and streams. The most important thing is to check flows. Kishwaukee River. Obviously up here in the north, we've had a ton of flooding, even down when we were in Tennessee 2 weekends ago. All the rivers and streams everywhere just flooded. When I check the Kishwaukee River, I go to Google, I put Kishwaukee River flow or something like that. And USGS will pull up, there's a flow chart, and get familiar with that. On there, it'll show you what like the average flow is. There'll be a graph. So if the graph is going like this, stay off the water. If the graph is coming down, once it gets down to that normal average flow, you'll want to go out there. I know I've been kind of hesitant lately because it's been so high. I actually might try to get out there tomorrow. I can talk Jay and going. But that's the biggest thing. Rivers and streams, flow is the biggest word. And just know your surroundings. If you've never been in a river, in a kayak, start small. Kishwaukee is a great river. Just make sure it's at the normal flows. And then, you know, my biggest thing is I'll go scout out small stretches of it, you know, on any new stream, and just kind of make a mental note of there's an obstruction here, there's an obstruction there. Rivers change all the time. You know, you get high waters, new timber flows down that river. You know, you get all kinds of stuff you'll see on a river, and that's what's unique about fishing rivers, is it's an ever-changing thing. So you'll find new structure all the time where those fish are playing with you. I know Jay loves fishing rivers, especially he lives down by Bowling Green. He's got a few nice rivers and streams down there. I fish the Kishwaukee all the time. There's some nice stretches of the Rock River up north here. I actually talked to somebody that was in the shop a couple of weekends ago. They fished a section down south by Oregon. They said it's really nice. So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and then like the other thing is too, like if you're new to rivers and creeks and situations like that, try to utilize social media, like some of the forums. There's a lot of people out there who will give you good info to kind of what to go on. And to his point, when you're checking USGS sites for the CFS, it's cubic feet per second. You know, for me, like I'm on the plains, so the stretch I fish a lot, I know really well. I know when it's getting higher or when it's like my own peak I won't go past, just because of paddleability. Most of it's paddleability, I think, and also too because I know the fish are really moving around at that point, and it's not even really worth going out unless you just want to kind of go for a cruise. But as you get on that water more and you do these different areas, you'll learn more about the river and what you're comfortable with, what you think is good. Some guys keep charts. I mean, I have friends that keep Excel spreadsheets when they went out, what the weather was like, what the CFS was, how the clarity was, even down to what he fished. I mean, dude, we're talking like he's got data. Some people get that deep into it, but I mean, but like for me, I'll be at work because I got a regular gig too, and I'll be checking because I'm gonna go out after work. What's it at today? So I mean, just stay in the know of the waters you want to fish, and like I said, keep track of what you think is good for you, and then you'll kind of be able to plan out your day or your weekend about like where you're going to fish.
Yeah, I know the Kish, I usually don't try to fish it if it's above 500. I know when we had these high waters, they got up to 1,800 CFS, which is like over three times what I would normally fish it. That's such a small body of river, or small river, that amount of water rushing can get quite dangerous. And especially if you're new to it, you're on that moving water, and then all of a sudden, like I said, new things float down the river. There's a dam of logs. What are you going to do now? You have to either get off the shore, otherwise what could happen is your boat could turn, get pinned against that log, turn you over, and now you're trapped under the log jam. So. Yeah, so in like the contrast to that, it's like on the displays. Like usually if it's like 550, that's like golden for me. Yeah. But I'll fish it till like 1200. It just depends. Usually like it's 5 to 1,000 cubic feet per second. That's usually where I'm at. I'm okay with that. Anything above that, I'm like, yeah, let's see. And I also know too, if it's too low, I gotta walk some spots with my kayak instead of being able to, because I'll paddle upstream. That's usually what I'll do, because there's some key spots I have to paddle up to. But, so that means going from skinny water, 500 being too high, to me going, oh, that's just perfect. Yeah. To 1,000 and maybe a little higher. I mean, of course, I know that stretch, so I know if I get into some trouble, like I know the safety spots. If I gotta run aground and
and I gotta get out of the water, I know where I can go. You know, I mean, and to the point, even if it was a life and death situation, I can just stash the kayak and walk, or crawl, whatever I gotta do. You know, because I know the dry areas and everything. But it's important. Rivers are very unpredictable, but very fun.
Have you done anything on the Fox to hold it out confident?
Yes.
Yeah, like pieces, but nothing like.
I've done, there's a launch right there by I-90. I've fished that stretch down there. I haven't ventured too far north or south. My buddy that's got the Frontier 12, he lives in West Dundee. So he's ventured more north. In that West Dundee, East Dundee, Carpentersville area, there's a couple decent spots. I know a lot of guys fish down Batavia, Geneva, Aurora,
That's usually where
Yorkville areas, and I know that's where Jay goes quite a bit.
the Montgomery Dam too, right by Yorkville.
Yeah, just know where the dams are, because you don't want to come up on it and all of a sudden, you know, you're going for a ride.
They get crazy over there. The currents, even after the dam.
Yeah, that's when you go, oh shit, and hold on for dear life. But that area down by I-90 there, there's some decent smallmouth down in that area. And up by the Algonquin Dam as well. There's some good smallmouth action down there by Buffalo Park, which is right on the lower end of the dam. Typically, I know for me, when I'm fishing rivers, I'm usually looking for rocky bottom when I'm looking for smallmouth. Jay will go looking for weeds because he knows that's where the pike are hiding. So, you know, that spot he was talking about that he paddles upstream, if Jay ever invites you to go fish the Discoins with him, stay home because it's a long paddle upstream. And by the time you paddle all the way up there, you don't even want to pick up your rod and cast because your arms feel like they're going to fall off.
It's so worth it.
He tells you it's worth it. Trust me. It's
Yeah,
not.
he was like, "Are we there yet? We're almost there." Lying.
Local species of fish: bass, smallmouth, largemouth, striped bass, white bass, panfish, northern pike, muskie, walleye, carp, catfish. You know, there's a lot of different game species in the area to target. Fishing rods. This is a question I think we get asked the most from our listeners on the podcast is, hey, what type of fishing rod should I use? What action? What tip? You know, what weight? Things like that. You can use spinning and or casting. Length is kind of key. You know, I got this 7.6. You know, trying to get a fish in when you're sitting in the seat, you're sticking your arm way out here trying to net the fish on the left side of the boat. You know, obviously different rod lengths and stiffnesses are going to be for certain techniques. And then, you know, the big thing lately is kayak-specific rods. A lot of kayak-specific rods, like this one in particular, they shorten up the butt length a little bit because they know you're wearing a PFD. So, you know, you don't want a, you know, musky rod with a 24-inch butt, otherwise you're casting like this. A little goofy, a little uncomfortable. You know, this particular rod, this is Elysian fishing. They shortened up the butt length a little bit. They put these wing grips on. And I know the St. Croix, I always want to say Moyak, but it's Mojo Yak rod or something. It's the same thing. I personally don't like them because that butt end is like this short. So with a casting rod, you know, a lot of times you're doing the two-handed bat. There's not a ton to grab on that kayak rod made by St. Croix. Everybody's preference is going to be different. The one thing I do like is these wind grips. I was kind of skeptical of them first. I know Lew's makes some rods with these wind grips on them, but when these things get wet, they get a little more tackier. When you're in a kayak, you're going to get wet no matter what, whether it be a little or a lot. You know, so that's the big thing with kayak-specific rods. Usually they're referring to a shorter butt end, some type of tackier, stickier grip because you know you're going to get them wet. And you know, rod lengths isn't usually a deal. Like this is a 7-footer. I'm fine with 7-foot rods. I know some guys go down to like a 6'6", things like that. Again, I'm kind of a freak of nature. I got long arms, so I can stick my arm out here and grab the fish down there. I don't know if you have a rough time with.
No, ultimately for me, it's the balance. Just like if you were casting from shore, anything. You know, to his point about the Mojo Bass series, I'm not a big fan of them either because they feel very front heavy.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, it just doesn't feel good. I'm a two-handed caster. I still feel that weight, you know, and I just can't do it. You know, it's funny. I'm a big proponent of the working man's class, so I'll use like carbon lines. They're like a great all-around rod, but they're also standard length. So I don't, you know, again, you know, I have no problem.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm using heavier rods too with bigger butt ends. To me, it's about the balance. It really is. It's all preference. You know, whatever feels good. You know, because what feels good to him doesn't feel good to me.
Sure.
Really, what you should be the deciding factor on rods is what do you throw? That's in my, you know, my first opinion, I guess. Like the first thing I would go with is, you know, what gauge hook are you throwing? You know, what do you need? You know, what kind of power do you need to deliver that hook set? That's what drives my decision. And we talked about it on the way up here. Not so much in a kayak scenario. Well, actually, it was where there's, you know, it was like early spring. I'm using a medium fast tip. I'm throwing kind of a super line 3/0 hook, and that's a pretty. So super lines, if nobody knows what it is, it's a thicker gauge hook, and I'm hitting beds and I'm getting tons of bites, and I'm trying to set the hook. I cannot set the hook. I'm missing fish left and right, and this was like a great day. This is like one of those days you tell all your friends about, except this part.
Yeah.
And then I switched on the water to the medium heavy. Immediately started catching all the fish I was missing. So I mean, and that was the thing. So to me, that's what I'm personally paying attention to is this going to provide the hooks that I need? You know, and then everything is an after.
Yeah, I think the main thing we were talking about was jig fishing. So right now, spring, jig fishing is like one of my favorite things to do. And, you know, we were talking about Jay's scenario there, and, you know, I'm like, dude, you need a heavier rod. And this is actually considered a 7-foot heavy by Elysian. And you just want that little bit stiffer rod so you get that good hook set out of them. You know, my spinning rod here, usually I'm running a drop shot on it. You know, more of a finesse style bait. So you want a little bit more sensitivity on that end. You see how much that shakes. I mean, you're going to feel every little nudge. This little weight, I can feel it dragging on the bottom, hitting something. And then when a fish hits this, you can ultimately hit it.
But again, the gauge of that hook is really small, right?
Yeah.
So you can use that medium fast tip or even a moderate. You know, when it comes to drop shot or Ned rigging, even wacky rigging.
Yep.
That'll deliver the punch.
Yep. Crankbaits, when you're running crankbaits, you usually want a moderate action rod so that rod loads up as you're setting the hook instead of if you were using like a heavy rod, it's going to rip that crankbait right out of the fish's mouth. So like a moderate action on a crankbait, jerkbait, things like that, so the rod's loading up before it's pulling on that lure, so to speak. That makes sense. Good bass baits. You know, we both love throwing the chatterbait. That's probably one of our go-tos. Ned rig is a really popular bait now. Spinner baits, crankbaits, buzz baits. Not this color, but
There's nothing wrong with that color.
Jay likes his color.
Dude, this is a pipe magnet right there.
Buzz bait, good top water action. It's like a frog. This is a great summer bait. Fall as well. Swim jigs, things of that nature. You know, if you guys got any questions on baits and things of that.
What's a Ned rig?
So a Ned rig, I'll pull one out. Yeah, I'm sure I got one. I hope I got one. Ned rig is it's made by a company called Z-Man. And
Ned rig will change your life. This is like the kind of one-all guys. Like, and I've kind of taken a census from friends all around the country. This tends to show California, Florida, in the south, in the north. You'll see these being fished a lot in the spring because usually bass are chasing shad, smaller creatures. They kind of simulate, and there's different profiles to these.
This is a Ned rig head hook. It's kind of a mushroom style. And usually you're throwing, they call it the TRD. A lot of guys call it the turd. But it's a short little, like 2.5 inch work.
It's like a Senko, like cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's similar. A lot of guys who bounce it off rocks. I know they make one called the TRD hogs. I was fishing Evergreen Lake down by Newington, and I was ripping that thing through the weeds, and the fish was just coming up and hammering it. They make different style plastics, but the most popular one is the TRD. And they're making the big TRD, which is almost the size of a Senko. It's like an inch shorter. And they have different size. The thing with the Ned rig is Z-Man makes those heads, the hooks, but the plastics that they make go along with that, they call it Elastec. That plastic has a buoyancy. So if you were to throw that Ned rig on like an offset hook, kind of throwing it like reedless Texas style, it never sits. Just because that plastic floats. So what it does is when you have that worm on that hook, and you notice how light this was, right? I think this is a 1/16 of an ounce. When you're popping it, it's got a slow fall and flutter, which I think really gets a reaction out of the fish, and that's why they cling to it so much. It's not like throwing that 1/2 ounce jig where it's bouncing. This is more of a finesse style of fishing. When fishing is really tough, pull a Ned rig out with a TRD on it, and I guarantee you're going to find some fish. And not only that, but I've caught bass, I've caught crappie, I think I've caught a bluegill on it, pike. Pike will tear up those TRD hogs. I may have some out in my truck I can show you. I didn't bring them in. But check out Z-Man Plastics. I'm not like sponsored or affiliated with them, but that Elastec plastic, that buoyancy you get out of it, is pretty unique. And one thing I will say is if you have some of those plastics, don't mix them in with your regular plastics, because whatever's in that the Z-Man stuff will make your other ones like kind of melt into the same. It's kind of weird.
They actually say to leave them in the bags they come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you using kind of the Gulf
Not as much as I used to. I used to use the big thing I would use by Gulf was like 2 inch or 2.5 inch kind of like shiner type looking thing. I know a lot of guys use it. My old man loves Gulf. I mean, he's got a whole duffel bag full of like the big plastic containers and stuff. It's not bad. Any scent, any kind of bait, it's going to do something for you. Yeah.
And you're going to get like your confidence bait. Like, we all got like where you think, oh, this is the best thing. You're like, oh, I like this thing. You're like, they look exactly the same. 2 different names, different scent, maybe a couple little different colors. Ultimately, same profile and everything. But yeah, Z-Man, as far as plastics go, they're kind of the leader in the Elastec aspect. They haven't used them. You can reuse the plastics like over and over and over and over and over. Like, if you use traditional plastics, they get tore up. If you're not melting them back together, you're basically throwing them in the front of your kayak like every 2 to 3 bass, or a boat rather. But the Elastec stuff, like, you can catch 50 fish on them, like those Ned rigs. You can catch, like on one of those little TRDs, you can catch like 50 bass on easy.
That was the first time I used Z-Man. I was up in Hayward, Wisconsin this past summer, and I was fishing. There's a couple of islands on this lake I was fishing. They were real rocky, and anybody that knows me knows I love throwing crayfish. And usually I put a 3/8 ounce bullet weight in front of a 2-aught or 3-aught offset hook, and I was jigging that off the rocks. And I was using a Berkeley chigger craw, which the craw that's on this that's exactly what it is. So the problem I was having was every 2 or 3 fish, this plastic was done. Either a craw would get ripped off, the hook was ripping through the plastic like a normal set. I had a bag, I was throwing the chigger craw in green pumpkin, and I had a bag of green pumpkin Z-Man turbo craws. I legit caught 50 fish plus, and I have it all on video if you don't believe me. 50 fish plus, and I was still using the same plastic. I left Hayward and was going to meet Jay and a good friend of mine, Scott Purrs, up in Green Bay to fish for walleyes out of a glitter rocket, and I got there early, and I was tossing that same plastic on Green Bay, catching smallmouth off the rocks in the harbor there when they got there. And Jay showed up, and I was like, dude, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, I'll never have to buy another bag of plastics again. Lo and behold, I now own probably 70 bags of Z-Man plastics. And Jay will tell you that's no bullshit.
It's a store downstairs.
Yeah, so
It's funny. I can afford to get cheap messages. Go like,
yeah.
you know.
we had a podcast listener that was like, well, if they last so long, how come you have so many different bags? And I said, because they offer so many different colors, unfortunately. So, but I mean, legit, 50, 60 fish off of one plastic, which is like ridiculous. I mean, we all know how plastics rip up.
You know, and like to that point, like a lot of guys sew with elastics instead of last so long. And when you take a hook out, it's kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Like it'll bring back the plastic. What a lot of guys do is they'll actually dedicate one head. So they'll basically like put the whole thing back in the bag after they're done. If that color's not working, they just retie on another one instead of the plastic.
Yeah.
Just because of the damage factor that happens. And a little tip with Z-Mans, a little bit of crazy glue, put it on the inside of the edge of the head, stick the plastic to it, and it'll never slip down.
Yeah, sometimes it'll slip down, and from working back and forth, it'll become a little loose.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's really hard. It's not as easy as puncturing through a normal plastic, so to speak. But that Z-Man, because it'll stretch, like one of those 2-inch worms, I can stretch it like this, let it go, and it goes back to normal. But because it'll work up and down and kind of get, stretched out a little bit and conform to that hook, like Jay said, a little bit of super glue on that head, and that thing is, even if it does break free after like 10 or 15 fish, just a little dab of super glue and pushing it tight to that head again, letting it dry. I mean, that's probably the number one trick that a lot of pros that throw those will tell you. A little dab of super glue. And that's with any bait, a little bit of super glue on any kind of head will definitely help out. But those Z-Mans will last a long time. Kayak fishing tournaments. They're all catch, photo, and release tournaments. So you see this big fancy catch board that I got here. Hog Trough makes some. Fishing tournaments, usually you're putting your fish on this board, taking a photo of it, submitting it to Turn the Axe, iAngler, they're all apps on your phones. It's nice, especially in spring. Here, the big talk of the town right now is bed fishing. Is it good, bad, especially in big bass tournaments? Guys are catching these huge females that are on bed, throwing them in a live well, stressing them out, taking them to weigh in, and then they're getting released 5 miles away from where they were on bed, and they'll never find their way back, and how that hurts, spawn levels for that year, things like that. We're not going to go down that road. But in a kayak, you don't have a live well necessarily. I've seen live wells rigged up. I forget what company it is. They make like a sleeve that goes in a milk crate that you can put in the back, fill it with water, so you can have a live well. But that's a nice thing about kayak tournaments. You're not taking those fish away from beds. It's not getting harmed or risking fish dying, so to speak, especially in hot summer months, things of that nature. KBF is Kayak Bass Fishing. That's nationwide. KBL is a local club I know Rocktown sponsors them. I fish the KBL. Chris fishes the KBL. Jay used to fish the KBL. Jay's now fishing the Great Lakes Kayak Tournament Series. There's Southern Illinois Kayak Series. There's like 3 or 4 up in Wisconsin. There's tons of different things.
Michigan's got a good one too.
There's live events, and then there's online events. Online events, like right now, KBF does a monthly tournament where it stretches the whole month. So you're not restricted to going out fishing this Saturday when your wife had already made 6 different plans for you and a honey-to-do list. So it's just at the leisure of getting out. You know, while you're out there, it's like usually the online's I think they're $30 or $35. A bunch of people in the state of Illinois sign up, take your photos, submit them online, and hopefully you win. Usually what pays out for second and third, things like that. Goes towards Angler of the Year points, which, like I said earlier, there's the national championship going on right now. First place is 50 grand this year, I think. Last year was 100.
Yeah, that was a hard one.
So there's different styles of tournaments, things like that. If that's something you guys are interested in, me and Jay were talking about that just a little bit ago before this all started. You know, if any of you guys were interested in learning about tournament fishing, we were maybe going to talk to Kevin and maybe put another one of these little seminars together directly for tournament fishing if you guys are interested in it.
Is there a publication out there that talks about this? Or
Yeah,
word of mouth?
There's a ton of stuff. If you just Google search kayak bass fishing, that's the most well-known one.
If you go through they have like rules,
Yeah.
and it lists pretty much everything, and it'll detail basically how to do it, how to take the picture,
Sure.
how your fish has to lay on there. There's a whole lot of detail that goes into that aspect, but it'll give you basically a rundown of how to enter into the kayak bass fishing industry and start competing against people statewide and even nationwide in some cases.
Yeah, KBL is a local organization. Their live events is limited to 50 members, but they do an online event every month from April to September, October, I forget. But they do it so it's 2 weekends in a month, not the whole month. But that's open to the general public. There's an app called Tourney X where everything's submitted to. They got judges that go on, make sure, there's rules like the mouth has got to be closed, it's got to be tied up against the fence, you can't hold the tail, things like that. Actually, you gave me a great idea. I'll probably make a YouTube video about that now. And I think we actually may have talked about it on our podcast. A lot of the stuff that we talked about today, we talk about all the time on the podcast that we do. It's free. It's on like 12 different platforms. We have a YouTube channel, things like that. Because we get a lot of questions from guys like yourself that are new to kayak fishing and things like that. And it could be, I know we had a guy reach out just the other day. He bought a Bonafide 11.7 from here, and he was worried about his fishing rods. So we covered that fishing rod topic, and that was part of the reason why I was in this notes today. Some of this stuff is second nature to us, and it's not stuff we always think about. So, we always look to folks like you for suggestions, and we have a ton of guests that cover all types of industries. We've had rod manufacturers on, a guy that works with boat manufacturers, guys that are professional kayak fishermen, and things of that nature. So we got some cards up here, if you guys want to grab them. Our email's on there. If you guys ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And we'd be more than happy to point you guys in the right direction, things like that. If you got a question, or, simple as I had a guy the other day email us, hey man, I'm looking at setting up my depth finder. You got any suggestions or things I should be looking at or looking for? This morning I responded to an email. A guy wants to put GoPros on his boat when he's fishing this year, so he was asking what cameras I use and how I rig them up and things like that. anything that's related to anything in this whole thing here, feel free to reach out to us. Or you got a new bait and you don't know how to use it or something like that. That's why we started doing what we do. We just love fishing, love the sport of kayak fishing, and just want to keep it growing. So,
Yeah, like to this point, we were thinking about coming together in a seminar just to kind of go through all the ins and the outs of just tournament fishing from a kayak, what you can expect, some of the things we've run across, how to keep the fish on your, on the board, not flipping off, because we've all lost big fish. And sometimes that's the fish, and I'm not good in those situations myself. I will eat myself alive. Like I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm human. This is another reason why I don't tournament fish. I'm so hard on myself, but like I push myself into it. But I know I have weaknesses and things I have to get over. But that's one of the things that'll like.
Learning to take a picture's a skill.
Yeah.
We talked about it this morning. I lost 2 fish at the side of the boat, and that would have put me in 2nd place right now for the monthly challenge. And now I was in 4th, and now I left one of the guys that decided to go out fishing today, so I'm in 5th. But I lost 2 fish at the side of the boat, and I was telling Jay about it this morning. He's like, "Yep, I can tell you're upset."
Dude, yeah, on the phone, you can just hear it.
I had a 3-hour drive home from Springfield, and it was like the whole time, like everything's just going through your mind. But I'm a very competitive person. I let that stuff eat me up. But we were talking about clean deck the other day. Last Saturday, I was down there. I had put my rod down here on the deck. Like I said, I had a ton of crap. I had my paddle across my lap. I didn't have a net. I had a 15.5-inch fish, which would have me in like 3rd place right now. And I had it on the board. I was trying to take the picture, but the sunlight, the way it was coming down, I was getting a shadow across the first 3 inches of the fish. You don't want any issues, right? Because once you release that fish back into the water, it's done. Like, you have no other chance to take that photo. So I was trying to shift around and move this bump board. And when I moved the bump board, my rod went like this. And I had a 3-second decision. Do I take my left hand off the fish and let him jump over the side? Or do I grab my rod and, sacrifice losing the fish? Lo and behold, like you said, these are expensive setups. I went for my rod and that 15.5-inch fish. As soon as I took my hand off it, whoop, and that was that. But Jay will tell you about a little fancy retrieval device, which I'll recommend to you guys, and I've been slacking off.
I actually have a
It's called a Savior device.
Savior Outdoors boomerang retrieval.
Basically, you cut this butt end off any of your rods, and it retrofits right on the end. You drop your rod in the water, and it could take anywhere between 2 and 15 minutes. And what it has is a little tablet in it. Once it gets wet, it explodes, and that's kind of like the safety inflatable vest. It explodes, and this butt end turns into a bobber, and it's got a line connected to your rod. So Jay had an instance. He was down on Kentucky Lake, lost a rod, didn't even know he lost it, was paddling back in at the end of the tournament, and he saw the bobber floating in the water, and he's like, "That's weird." And he looked behind him, noticed he was missing a rod, grabbed that bobber, pulled up the line, and got his rod. So
I just didn't use that rod that day, and I was like, it just, it's funny because I'm cruising up, and I'm like, damn, that looks like such a familiar shape.
Who's the dummy who lost his rod?
And I'm going like this, and I go, oh, and then you're like, that's what that noise was. I'm like, that's what that weird noise was like earlier. So I got lucky. So and it's actually one of my favorite rods I still use today. It can happen. Even guys on boats, they'll kick over one over the side, and you lost your rod.
Fish takes it away from you.
Yeah, no, seriously. Any of that stuff can happen, and basically the Savior Outdoors device, it's like again, it fits on the back of the butt of the rod, just like what you have on your rod already, but it has 60 feet of braid on it, like a 20-pound braid, and so you can drop the thing, 60 feet of water, and you'll get it back. River's a little different situation because of current and stuff, but as long as you know that, and you drop one, like just look for it down the current a little more, and you should be able to find it unless it's like insanely, and the CFS is like through the roof. But yeah, it's. Brian wouldn't have had that problem losing that fish because he hasn't put anything on his rods yet.
That was the first comment he made to me. Well, you know, if you had that device on your rod, you would have that picture uploaded right now.
It's the first 5 comments he made to you.
Pretty much like that. And,
Dude, I'm telling you what, man, like that, they work. I know a lot. I mean, I'm on the team, of course, so I'm going to push it, but I got reached out to by Corey, who runs the company, and I was a little hesitant. I'm like, really? Especially about cutting off the butt end of your rod. Nobody wants to do that. You guys think it's insane, I'm sure. You're like, dude, I've got like a $300 rod. You're like, yeah, just cut it off. You know, nobody wants to do that, but I can tell you right now, you do that, it'll just change your life. Now with kayak fishing, you're so close to the water that things can happen in an instant, and you just lose stuff.
It's like paying insurance on
Yeah.
your vehicle. You know, you don't plan on getting in an accident, but when you do, it's worth, you know, having that and the low deductible and everything else. It's the same thing. I think that retrieval device is $35 to protect a $300 investment as well. Worth
And there's reloads, so if you do drop it, you can just reload it.
Yeah, it's
Even on the water, you can done. You know, I mean, you need a screwdriver. That's about it.
Yeah. I know you two guys signed up late. We got some stuff to give away. If you guys want to put your name on the piece of paper up here, throw it in the bin. We got pizzas and beer back there. If you guys want to get some pizza and a drink or something, and we'll kind of give away some of this stuff to you guys, and we appreciate you guys coming out. And then not only that, if you got any questions, we'll do a little Q&A. If you guys got questions, we're more than happy to answer. So yeah, if you guys want to grab some pizza and stuff.
Well, I wanted to say this, like, is anybody pressed for time and got to get out of here? Because we could probably switch around what we were going to do it, because we were going to basically do like a little intermission, but if you guys are running out of time, we could probably move that faster for you.
6:20.
Oh, really? All right.
She good looking.
He's running out of time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we can push through it. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so let's get you guys to do this, and then we'll do that aspect, and then we can do the beer pizza.
Yeah, perfect.
And then we could kind of do like a Q&A,
I just gotta run.
kind of open forum, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Kind of impromptu. So you guys go ahead and come on up here. And then there's a piece of paper here and a pen. Oh, yeah. Because you guys then you like the seminar, like get some answers you didn't have before. And
I got one question for you, it keeps popping up.
sure.
And of course, if you read it on the internet, it's gotta be true.
Oh, it always is true.
Yeah. When it comes to
I would like to, you don't believe it.
when it comes to storing your kayak,
Sure.
one aspect of what you read says, stow it in the corner.
Sure.
Tip up.
Yep.
Don't ever stow it flat as you raise it in the garage.
Okay. So usually there's going to be a factory requirement. I think Kevin can speak to this too, depending on the manufacturer. For Jacksons, you pretty much store them on their sides. And I don't know with the other manufacturers, any differences?
The only thing we say is you're storing it in winter, make sure it's void of water.
Okay.
That's it. So we haven't been told by anybody stern on the stern or on the side. Don't have it exposed in too much sun. You know, 90-degree sun for a week. You can oil
Hot or
can.
cold?
Cold's fine. Just make sure there's no water in it. So make sure and
Leave it in the garage,
Well-
just below freezing, we don't care.
And
no,
let me,
as long as you make sure you clear it with water. There's no water in the hole. As long as the water's clear, you can store the things in the wintertime. No
okay.
problem at all.
So what I've noticed too, from my own personal experience, is that so again with the heat and with strapping down, so those of us that have trailers, a lot of us will leave them on the trailers. Some people have round bars that go across, and that's fine. But what I've noticed is that you'll get some pitting, and what pitting is actually a dent in the plastic. So you'll actually start to reform the plastic where that pressure is. So depending on how often you're transporting, how long you leave it connected to your trailer, you can get some pitting or some kind of deformation with your kayak hull, the bottom of the kayak. I have PVC tubes. I have 3-inch ones because they pretty much fit, for the most part, the curvature of my kayak. I've also positioned them strategically so that most of the weight is dispersed along. I think I have 7-foot ones, so that way I don't get pitting. Also, too, whenever I get home, I always loosen up all the straps, so that way even the pressure isn't on all of it. And then before I take off again, just tighten it up and tie them down to get out there. But
Watch the heat, definitely. You know, because in every kayak's different, because I mean, you know, Bonafides are made with different plastic than New Canoe and Jackson. So they're all going to react different to different situations. So just be cognizant of that and just, you know, make the adjustments where you need it.
So the sling that you would use in the garage application,
Like the harness, the roof,
yeah, you
the
pull it up,
ceiling,
stays
yeah.
up there.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
My buddy that's got the Frontier 12, that's what he does.
Yeah, just be careful with that because with the way kayaks, and this I can speak from experience with a feel free, dude, that thing dropped from like 5 feet to the concrete.
Or on my car.
Yeah, or it can kill somebody, obviously. So what I would do is if you do that, like do some kind of a connecting strap underneath or a couple, you'll figure it out because a lot of this stuff is DIY. I think that's what you'll find is you make the transition to kayaking, anything goes. It doesn't matter. Like what you think is cool, fine, like do it. You're gonna find stuff that works for you and stuff that doesn't. So a lot of it's trial and error. Again, my error. Like when it dropped, it scared the crap out of me. Thank God it did it when I was there because usually there is a car underneath it. You know, so I learned real quick what not to do. But you guys got any more questions?
Most accessories you see on kayaks were a DIY hack job.
Yeah.
The manufacturer said, I can make money off this, and mass produced it. This was a kitty litter box,
Yeah.
PVC tube.
Cool.
More to waterproof containers and all sorts of stuff. So,
Yeah.
as Jake said, a lot of it's DIY, trial and error stuff.
Yep.
The industry in and of itself is only around about 6-7 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know.
So what we'll do now, I guess we'll start drawing names, and we're gonna do. I guess we'll just do like one thing, like per name, and then once we run out of names in here, like we'll
Put it back.
we'll cycle it back in because we do have more stuff than the number of guys that are here. I was hoping to at least get up like I wish we had 10 of those. Yeah. You know, but yeah, so we'll just do that, and then you guys can come out and pick one thing that you
What's
want.
going first?
Whatever they want.
Oh, yeah.
I'll
I'll
just
take
do that.
this right here.
Yeah. So let's be specific on the table, not in this box, not the computer.
One thing is so I stated earlier, I'm on the Elysian fishing rod team. They're donating a rod to this little thing, so we'll pick that last. We'll put everybody's name back in here. It'll be one of the kayak rods, but they make several different ones. So before whoever wins it, I'll sit down and talk with you, figure out what length, weight, all that stuff with you, and then I'll have them drop ship it to you. So it's like $180 for shipping.
So first winner is Ralph. Look at this guy, litter rod.
Yeah. Why would I have anything on?
There you go. I'm gonna try to speed this up for you, man, so you can get out of here. All right, John
Is that John?
Woodbury. I know there was two. Dave Carter. What's your name? I'll go through all of them.
What is it, John?
Mike.
Which
Which one? Walschlager?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. That was pretty good. First try.
Tim Perman. That's where much of this No, I know. I'm gonna get you out. Yeah, that one's for you. You can take that.
You have an excuse, you're not in the Bible.
Yeah.
Don't drink any beer before you leave. She won't believe you then.
The next one will be Mike Bradford. Alan Becker.
It's a pretty second.
Saving the best for last,
I know, right? Ray Becker. Is that Beckner or Becker? Beckner. Beckner. Where's the That one's an easier one than the other one. Chris. He's literally the last one.
Paul is the last one.
Well done. Do it again.
Oh, personally just put that one in this pocket. Do this so they know.